Please welcome Matt Kaufman and Neslihan Gula.
My name is Matt Kaufman. I'm the Chief Safety Officer for Roblox.
And I am Neslihan Gula. I am the Engineering Manager for Engine Security Team.
You know, I just realized we don't have a clicker.
Oh yeah, where is it?
Hold on a second. While they're grabbing us a clicker, we're just going to go by memory. So we're going to be talking about innovations and safe and secure experiences on Roblox. I will kick it off. Thank you. All right. Technical problems. I will kick it off. Let's see with my clicker. I'm going to kick it off by talking a little bit about civility and what civility means for us on the platform and how we can partner together on that. Then we'll turn to talking about some work that we're doing right now to address some of the safety issues that you, the developer community, have raised. And then we'll turn it over to Neslihan, who will talk about exploit protection.
Yes.
All right. So with that, we'll get started. All right. Our goal is to become the leader in civil immersive online communities. And we think we can do that with partnering with you, the developer community. So I already talked about what we're going to cover today, so we're going to jump right into it. So let's talk about civility. Civility is where you have people who feel like the situation they're in is fair, respectful, and helpful. And if you think about it, civility really starts once you've established a foundation of safety. So I want to run through how we think about safety and some of the pillars behind safety, and then we'll turn our attention back to civility. So, safety. The first pillar of safety that we think about is accounts. So every day we have about 65.5 million users on Roblox, and we want to make sure that all of them have simple and secure access to their accounts. Now, what makes this in particular challenging is that the range of our users is from professional developers who are running studios like many of you, all the way to kids who might be creating their first online account on Roblox. And we have to make it work for everybody and everybody in between. And so that's the real challenge we face on the account side. The next pillar is content safety. So each day, and I think Dave talked about this yesterday, or maybe it was Manuel, 2.5 million assets are uploaded to the platform. That includes images, meshes, video, audio, animations, all kinds of stuff. And what we try and do is make sure that we review every single one of those assets to make sure that it complies with our community standards. In the future, we imagine a time where assets can also be targeted towards specific age groups. So if you think about our experience guidelines and you say, okay, well, we have 17 plus or we have all ages, we imagine a future where you could tie assets to a particular age rating, and then we would have that work through the system so that people only see content which is appropriate for their age. We don't have that today, but it is something that we've been thinking a lot about. The next pillar is communication safety. So with communication, each day, about 3 billion text messages and 450,000 hours of voice communication. And our job is to make all of that as safe as it can possibly be. Now, making it safe, if you lean all the way into safety, actually you could say, hey, we shouldn't have any communication at all. So actually there's a balance there. It's between safety and freedom of expression. And we want to create a platform which is both safe, but also where people can hang out with their friends, express themselves, and have real conversations. And when we think about like how we manage that, it is also fairly complex given, one, all of the different languages that people speak, often the same multiple languages on the same server, and also the wide range of ages on the platform and how we think about what's safe for, say, somebody who's young versus what's safe for somebody who might be over 17. And the next pillar that we think a lot about is user feedback. So on the platform today, each day, about 2 million pieces of feedback come to us. Most of that is coming from inexperience reports, which we sometimes call abuse reports. But it's also coming through the developer forums, and it's coming through customer service. And our first job is to try and make that information that's coming in as actionable as possible. So one of the things that we've been working on that you may have noticed is our inexperience reporting system is starting to let you take pictures of what's happening in the experience and mark it up and kind of tell us like, hey, something felt wrong, and I'm going to show you exactly what it is. And it's something that's been out in tests, but we plan on launching it to most people in the coming month or so. And so that's all about trying to make everything as actionable as possible. And we use all of this feedback that's coming in. We use it to address product challenges, to adjust our policies, and also to address specific safety concerns. So I want to talk about like one area where we've used a lot of that feedback recently, or within the last year, to make some big changes, and that's in text filtering. So we get lots of feedback on text that should or should not be filtered, or people who feel like conversations are problematic and whatnot. We take all of that and we label all of this text conversation. And what we've actually done is used that to train models for voice, detecting toxicity in voice, which is incredible because we have this like vast database of text in many languages, and we're able to use that and learn from it to create voice models. And now what we talked about yesterday, and that you may start experiencing, is in experiences, if we detect some type of behavior that does not follow our community standards, we'll pop a little alert to the person who's speaking and say, hey, reminder, like we have these community standards, please, maybe reconsider how you're talking about things, and maybe bring a little bit of civility to the conversation. So that's been out for a little bit. We're already seeing some really interesting results from that, and we're going to continue iterating on that both in English, and we'll be launching other languages in the future. So taking together all of these things, accounts, content safety, communication safety, and user feedback, this constitutes our safety platform. And so we have a pretty large development team who's working on this all the time, taking in your feedback and making adjustments. And then there's also thousands of moderators and customer support agents behind this who are covering a large number of languages. They're working 24/7, all working to keep the platform safe. All right, so we've talked about safety is like this foundation for building civility on top of. So let's go back to civility. So remember, civility is where you feel things are fair, respectful, and you feel that they're helpful. But civility is complicated because it depends on context. So consider this. If you're out with your friends on a virtual hike somewhere, it's your closest friends, you've known them for years, what you say and how you behave is going to be very different than if you're like at a school setting, and maybe you're studying with people you don't even know. And it may be very different than if you're in some competitive game or something like that. So civility is contextual. And the reason why it's so important to be talking to all of you, the developer community, about this is because I think that it's a partnership between the two of us to bring civility to the platform. Because all of you are actually the ones defining the context. You know the experiences that you're building. You know who your audience is. And I think you have a pretty good idea of what you expect to happen there. And so we see our role is providing you a platform to be able to bring civility to your experience. So let's talk about how we're imagining doing that in the future. So the first thing is finding a way for you to be able to demonstrate your policies. So if you think about that, like the policies that you have, like if it's a shooting experience, you might have a non-camping policy. Whatever it is, we want to make it easy for you to define those policies and make it easy for users to be able to see what they are, maybe alongside our community standards, because your policies always sit on top of our community standards. The next thing we need to do is give you the tools to manage your community. We all know that sometimes we have users who need to take a break or maybe just need not to be in the experience at all. So we are launching platform abilities to ban users, and not just users, but their alt accounts as well. And that's why we're doing it at a platform level, because we're able to determine those connections between accounts. Nestle Han's going to be talking about the specific APIs in her section later on. The other thing, by using our platform tools to manage these bans, it also creates opportunities for those users to appeal those decisions. Because sometimes something happens, things go wrong, and maybe somebody really made a mistake and we want to undo it. We can provide tie-ins to our appeals process for that. And the last thing is providing you insights. So there's a lot of stuff that happens in your experiences from a safety perspective. People are muting each other, they're blocking each other, they're making friends, they're unfriending. We know what's happening with like text moderation or voice moderation. There's all kinds of stuff. And what we want to do is be able to give you insights into what's happening in your experience, maybe even where in your experience these things are happening, so that you can take that and use it to tune your stuff. Now, the insights go further. For some of you who are working on experiences where you can create content, our plan is to eventually be able to give you APIs where you can pass content to us, and we'll let you know whether that content created in the experience follows our community guidelines. All right, so that's how we think about civility in the future. So now let's talk a little bit about some of the work that we're doing today, and really in the last 6 months to a year, on improving safety based on a lot of your feedback. So the first thing is improving content moderation. We've heard a lot from you that content moderation can be a real challenge. Sometimes we get it wrong. And when we get it wrong, it slows down your workflows, and worse, it can end up in bans. So we've been spending a lot of time trying to figure out how we make this a lot better and improve the accuracy of our content moderation. The first thing we're doing is retraining of all of our moderation staff. What we found is over the years, different parts of our moderation community have been trained to different standards, and this has caused inconsistencies. So we're out there and we're working on retraining and building all kinds of systems so we can constantly train people, not just do it once, but have training be a constant part of people's day-to-day job. The second thing we're doing is if content is moderated, whether it's moderated from some machine algorithm or moderated because of a human decision, if it's moderated, what we want to do is we want to do a secondary review. And in that secondary review, we'll come in and we'll say, like, hey, are we really sure? We've already implemented this for images, and we're planning on doing it for other asset types as well. The next is scaling moderation through machine learning. So we think through algorithms, we can make much more consistent decisions and much faster decisions. So we're aggressively moving as much of our moderation pipeline to machines as possible. That doesn't mean there's not humans behind the scenes. They're the ones who are training it and handing appeals and all of that stuff. But as much as the first line decisions being automated as possible is what we're working on. And finally, we're rebuilding the appeals process. We're launching a new portal in Q4 where you can go in and you can see all of your assets which have been moderated. You can see the reasons why, and you can appeal them from right there. And then you can find out what the results from that is. And that's coming in Q4. So next, we know that protecting your creativity is really important. We want to foster creativity on the platform, but we also know that we need to protect it. So this is how we're approaching that. The first is for assets which are being submitted to the marketplace, we are going to be requiring ID verification for people to submit those. And that creates more accountability within the community. Thank you. All right. Next, we're doing more to try and help you all understand intellectual property. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act is really complicated, but it's the law. And we did a blog post a couple of weeks ago on the dev forum where we talked about some of the rules of the road there and what we can and cannot do, and we're going to continue to focus on that education. The next thing we're doing is really focusing on improving our tooling around reporting content that may be infringing on your intellectual property. So first half of next year, you'll see revamped tooling there. It's going to make it much easier to report things. And in the future, it's going to make it much easier to say, hey, here's my content. Roblox, you go search across Roblox and find anything that might be matching. Now, we can't make the decision on our own whether it's infringing. That's for you to make the decision on. But we can certainly make it easier for you to find that content. And so we have a team working on this right now. Expect to see some improvements starting at the beginning of next year. So finally, improving text filters. There's really two things we're doing here. One is we're giving you more control over text filter. So for 17 plus experiences, starting next month, or maybe Q4 next month, it may be one and the same, you'll be able to turn off the profanity filters for 17 plus experiences. And we see the ability of tuning text filters is something we want to pursue more in the future. We're starting off with profanity and 17 plus. The next thing we've been spending a lot of time on is how text filtering impacts the uploading of assets. So we know that there's been challenges where assets are uploaded, the asset is fine, but the metadata associated with the asset, for some reason, is blocked because we think it's PII or something like that. And because of that, the entire asset is moderated. Our vision is to get to a point where it looks just like our text filter when you're chatting in game, where if there's a problem with the metadata in an asset, we just X out that part of the metadata and everything else goes forward. We have a little ways to go to get there, but in the meantime, we've been doing a lot to really refine the filters that are applied to assets and hopefully have made that much smoother. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Neslihan to talk about exploit protection. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. You want to use mine?
Yeah.
I don't know if I can get it out of here.
Maybe I can take it. Hello, hello.
There you go.
No. Yeah, so first of all, I am really excited and grateful to be here to talk with you about exploit detection, protection, and in general safety and security, which is something that I feel deeply passionate about. So I would like to acknowledge first and foremost the significant impact of exploits on the experiences you create on Roblox. And in the same context, I also want to emphasize our dedication to intensively address this issue, to increase the security of our engine, and really to ensure a safe, secure, and fair environment for everybody. Today, in this presentation, we are going to dive into the specifics of how we approach this problem. We will talk about our defense in-depth strategy, which includes multiple layers of security. We will take a look at the roadmap for each layer. We will explore several prominent projects that we have achieved and discuss the impact that we have already achieved or strive to achieve. So let's get started. What do we really mean by multi-layer approach to exploit protection? Well, in the wild world of security, it is practically impossible to build a solution that can provide absolute security against all possible attacks. The same applies to our problem, exploit protection. There is no foolproof solution to prevent continuously evolving attackers on the platform. So our focus is not about finding the perfect single answer, but instead we focus on making it difficult, expensive, and non-beneficial to exploit on Roblox. We build solutions as a multi-layer approach to reach that goal. By following this layered approach, we increase the complexity and the obstacles that the attackers must overcome to enhance the overall security. The first layer is prevention. So we build systems to prevent exploits from happening in the first place. Of course, software protection is an important aspect of that, but we think a lot about server-side validation and server authority in this category as well. The second layer is detection. If we cannot prevent the exploit from happening, then the next best thing we can do is to detect and respond it quickly, while fulfilling the gaps that we discovered in the prevention layer. And finally, in the deterrence layer, we try to change the behavior of the exploiter by taking actions. These actions usually include kicks, bans, warnings, but in some specific cases, this can even include taking legal action. So rest of the presentation, we will take a closer look at each layer. In the prevention layer, our most significant innovation this year was the release of Hyperion. We have also introduced a new feature to prevent denial of service attacks, and I will provide further information about these two projects. But before that, since I believe you care about it, I want to talk about server authority. Briefly mention our ultimate goal to prevent physics exploits, which is making it possible to develop server authoritative games on Roblox. In order to do that, we are working on a more robust programming model that will simplify how the scripts synchronize data between client and server. This is a long-term project, and I won't be providing additional details, but in the long term, this is something we believe that will transform how developers work with engine. So please stay tuned for the updates in the upcoming years. So let's talk about something that has been really successful, Hyperion. Hyperion is an anti-tampering system that protects our Roblox client when it runs on the user's machine. You have already heard from Dan and also Peg. It had a great impact by reducing exploits and modding on the platform. So I'm not going to talk about these statistics, but have you seen these salty tears from the exploiter community? Yeah, would you help me to run a quick survey here? If you have seen these tiers, or if you have already noticed the positive impact of Hyperion on your experiences, or in general on Roblox, could you please raise your hands? Okay, nice. So really it is great to see the real impact that our efforts are making. However, we are aware that we are not done yet, and we won't stop. We are focusing on Windows Store application and Android platforms, as these two platforms have been the main targets of exploiters after the release of Hyperion. A customized version of Hyperion is integrated with Windows Store application and will be on production likely in a few weeks. An initial version of exploit protection on Android will be on production between early to mid Q4. Isn't that wonderful? Cool. Oh, by the way, although Roblox does not support Linux officially, we have some really dedicated and passionate engineers who deeply cares about Linux community, and they took the initiative to add the support to Hyperion for Linux and Wine. So this is just update for them I am making. Thank you to them. Before moving next layer, we should also talk about our efforts to prevent denial of service attacks. These attacks can be really painful, especially for developers who face it. Various forms of attacks target different layers of the system. The basic ones target the UDP/IP networking layer by sending large amounts of dummy networking traffic to exhaust servers' bandwidth. Other forms of attacks, we call them as inexperienced denial of service attacks. They target Roblox application layer or the experience itself to overload the server with computationally intensive tasks. They usually do this by finding a bug or vulnerability in the Roblox engine, the Lua interfaces, callback functions, remote events, experience scripts, and then exploiting it to perform the action. Both Roblox and the developers are expected to be proactive in finding these bugs and fixing them before the attackers do find and exploit them. However, we must also acknowledge there is no such thing as bug-free code. So we questioned ourselves, what more could we do? To counter flooding attacks, multiple teams at Roblox worked together to build server Roblox proxies, UDP proxies. I think it is publicly known as UDMAX servers. These proxies are able to filter out the illegitimate dummy networking traffic from the legitimate Roblox traffic to protect the game server behind it. It has been currently deployed to more than 75% of the data centers, and our dedicated engineers and teams are actively and relentlessly iterating to make it more robust, resilient, and strong against such attacks. To reduce the likelihood of inexperienced denial of service attacks, we have introduced fair resource sharing. As Dan made a fun analogy yesterday, it is like the bouncer at a party, making sure no single client eats up all the server snacks. In other words, we try to make sure all clients use the server resources fairly. It is implemented 100% in production now, and after weeks of monitoring and working closely with the developers who face the attacks, we have seen highly positive results. If you notice any denial of service attack on your experience, please reach out to us for support. Otherwise, there is no action needed on your end, as this comes as an out-of-the-box solution integrated with our game engine. So the second layer, we focus on detection. I'm not going to talk about our exploit detection mechanisms in detail and make life easier for those exploit developers. However, I am going to note that we have already implemented multiple mechanisms to detect them, and we will continue to innovate in this domain to track them down across the virtual landscape, regardless of what tools they use or what platforms they switch to. This is an ongoing battle, and we are always ready for the challenge. In this layer, you are going to learn about our innovative alt account detection service. As you already know, it is very easy, user-friendly process to create new accounts on Roblox. It is equally easy for exploiters to create throwaway accounts after getting banned. So our research indicates that 60% of the offenders resume their action within 12 hours by using new accounts. In order to tackle this problem, which is a key challenge in this domain, our exceptional safety teams have built a mechanism called Alt Account Detection Service, which assesses the degree of similarity between accounts using machine learning models and technologies. This is a super challenging task given the large scale at Roblox, also the need to do this in real time, and the crucial need for high accuracy to make sure right consequences are applied to right accounts that deserve it. Additionally, we are working on an API to provide this same functionality, to empower our community with the same functionality, and I will talk about it in the deterrence layer. In this layer, we are going to discuss about 3 exciting projects. The consequences service and its verified API are now complete, while the banning API is in the spotlight next to bring a fantastic feature to our community. We launched automated consequences service to enforce policy-based automated actions to exploiters and actually to all users that are detected for improper behavior. This is especially important from detection point of view because the detection is only meaningful when we take action against those bad users. Before this service, although we were detecting exploits with high accuracy, when it came to taking action, we were slow and inefficient since we purely relied on human-based moderation. We initially launched this system at a relatively low rate, around 10%, and we applied consequences to more than 350,000 accounts. And remarkably, despite the low rate, we have seen 4% increase in alt account creation. So clearly, these actors are trying to avoid the risk of losing their main accounts. However, we have some news for them. We are integrating the alt account detection service with the automated consequences service, and we will start taking action against alt accounts soon. While we have been working on all these technologies and innovative solutions, we also believe creating a safe and secure environment is a collaborative effort. We know there are many developers creating their own moderation services and exploit protection systems, and one of our ultimate goals is to provide the tools to our community to support these efforts. Is-Verified API is one of these tools which allows the creator to determine if a user is verified by user ID or phone. Given that these users, verified users, are less likely to be an alt account, then the creator can use this information to implement some exclusive privileges for these users in the experience. Since its deployment, it has been adopted by 60 experiences, and at its peak, it has been called 16 million times daily. There isn't many people here in the audience, but still I'm going to do another survey. So have you started using this API or considering to use it? Nice, cool. So actually you can use this to leverage, you can leverage this system for many purposes, including granting access to specific parts of the game, limiting inexperienced trading, competing for the leaderboard, or even just as a single additional signal for your exploit protection and moderation systems. And finally, I'll close my presentation by providing information for the banning API. Whenever we talk with our community about safety and security, we have always heard the request to share some of Roblox's moderation capabilities with the community. And the banning API, we have been designing the banning API for that purpose. It will expose the Roblox backend alt account detection and user consequences service to our developers. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this API will be its ability to not only restrict the individual accounts, but also the alt accounts associated with that account. And by integrating this API into your experiences, you can manage and deter repeat offenders by applying temporary or permanent bans to them. And with that, we come to an end of our session. Thank you so much for being here and listening to us. We hope you have gained additional insights today about our vision. I don't think we have time to take questions. We have 3 minutes. Maybe we can take 1 or 2 questions, but after the session, we will be at the booth. So please find us there, stop by to ask any questions if you have. Still, we can take like 1 or 2 questions. We have 3 minutes.
Anybody?
Yeah.
Back there?
Are we able to just ban the account, not ban alt as well? Just restrict it to that one account, not have the alt ban?
We have been talking about whether we should provide that ability. What you can do initially versus what you can do in the long term, I think we're still figuring out, but we also want to have the ability of banning for short periods of time versus banning permanently. If you could come by the booth, I'm really curious about the case of not doing the alt accounts. I would just like to learn.
Counter-Strike, good example.
Sure.
Any other questions? There are microphones here on both sides, I guess.
So the banning API, will it ban you for like a single game, or if it's like a group experience, will it ban you for all group games, or will that be possible?
So the banning API, so first of all, alt account detection service is going to be integrated with user consequences service for Roblox moderation first, before we open it up to our developers. And when we do it, we are going to start with severe offenses first in Q4. And by time, we are going to extend its coverage to cover all types of misconducts, including exploits. For the banning API, it is not clear yet. We are still designing the system, but probably we are going to follow the same path there. So we are going to start with severe offenses and then extend its coverage further by time. So please expect to hear more about it from us in upcoming weeks and months.
I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
Yeah, for much younger kids, like we're thinking ages 8, 10, how do we deal with things like legal action and ID verification? What are the alternatives? It's like, I don't think you can sue a 9-year-old, right?
Are we talking, so the question is, how do we manage younger kids, maybe around IP protection when it comes to legal issues and stuff like that? It is a good point. We are trying to figure some of this stuff out right now and working on how we handle appeals processes and other things like that with kids who are under 18 or even under 13 and who don't have IDs. I don't have a good answer right now, but it is something we're spending a lot of time thinking about.
Actually, just one example, when we found out a bad actor, we also found out they are below 18, you know, and so we reached out to their parents.
Yeah. We do. We have done so for some actors on the platform who have been we've had dedicated malicious actors who have been wreaking a lot of havoc. We will reach out directly to their parents and reach out and work with law enforcement in order to address that. I think that the bigger issue for us is how we handle things like intellectual property rights at super scale, and how we manage stuff like that. I think we are fairly unique in the scale that we operate at with the younger kids, so it's charting a little bit of new territory there, but it's a really good question. Mm-hmm. I think with that, I think we're out of time.
Yeah, we are out of time.
But Nestle and I are going to be at the booth, which is, it's that way. And so if you have more questions, please come by. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.